Hello again, this is Sean Terry from the Flip2Freedom Podcast, and we are on episode number 135, 2017, and we're actually starting a series called the 9-Step Seller Conversion Sequence. So this is specifically how to, so now you get a phone call from a seller, you book an appointment, you meet with the seller, and now that step, going the 9-step sequence, step by step, what it takes to get that deal converted into a contract. So we're going to talk about the 9 steps. It's going to be it's going to be 4-part series. So step 1 is preparing your file. Step 2 is pre-appointment intelligence. We're going to cover those 2 today. Step 3 is meeting the seller, strategic leading questions and building rapport, and also reading the seller. You got to know exactly, basically the personality type of the seller, so you know who you're talking to. That's critical. Going to get deep about that. Evaluating repairs. Specifically, this is a huge component that if messed up, it could blow your entire deal. We're going to talk about the custom covert intuitive presentation, the 3 surefire closing questions. What questions do you ask to get the deal closed, right? And the objection annihilation method. These are the objections that sellers have, and I've got literally the top 17, 18 objections and how to overcome those. We're going to talk about those. Closing the gap, right? So you offer 100, the seller needs to be at 120. How do you close that gap after you've overcome all the objections? And then the wrap-up, follow-up, step 9, and setting the expectation for going forward. So that is the 9-step seller conversion sequence. We're going to cover that over the next 4 weeks. I've got some killer free gifts I want to give you. Actually, if you go to flip2freedom.com/gift, flip2freedom.com/gift, I'm having Aaron create it's an infograph. And the infograph is basically the 9-step sequence, step by step, so you can see exactly how to lead a seller from an appointment all the way down to a contract. So that's going to be killer. Now, if you just jumped on here, you have no idea what we're talking about. You have no idea what wholesaling houses is. Let me tell you. What we do in the concept of wholesaling houses is something that I discovered back in 2003. All I thought about real estate was that either A, you had to be a real estate agent and represent someone so you could make money, or you could fix and flip properties like you see on all these TV shows. You look at, the flip and flop, right? They buy a property, fix it up, take a crappy property, make it beautiful, turn around, sell it, and make a profit. Or you buy a property and you turn it into a rental property, right? So the bottom line is that that's what I thought. That's the only way I thought you could be able to profit from real estate. So once I found out this concept of wholesaling, it completely changed everything for me. So what is wholesaling? Wholesaling is where you target a specific small niche in the marketplace, okay? 95% of everybody you and I know are going to call a realtor, list their property, and sell their property. I'm going to do it. You're going to do it. Most people are going to do it. There's a small sliver, 5% of the population, that don't want to wait, right, 120 days on market. They don't want to fix up the property. It might be fire damage. They might have a tenant trash the property. It might be an inherited situation. It might be a probate situation. They might have a pre-foreclosure. Whatever the case may be, there's distress there, and they want to sell their house quickly. Now, one thing about real estate, different from the stock market, you cannot now, look at me, I'm looking at stocks right now, and the stock market's obviously flying off the shelf, but Apple right now is $136 a share, right? Imagine if you could buy Apple for $80 a share, right? You buy as much as you can, right? And then you can turn around and sell it for $120 a share, and you can sell it at retail for $136 a share and sell it all day long, twice on Sunday. So the bottom line is real estate, you can do that. In stocks, you can't. You can buy a $100,000 house for $50,000, or you can contract a $100,000 house for $50,000. So what this whole thing is we target distressed sellers and we help them out of their situation. Because what happens is a lot of times they're going to meet with a realtor, and the realtor is going to tell them they have to fix the property, that they have to wait, they have to show the property. And a lot of people don't want to have the time or the money to spend. They just want to get it sold and sold now. So what we do is we can go meet with the seller through this 9-step seller conversion sequence. We can get the property under contract, right? And now we have an asset. So let's say you have this $100,000 house for $50,000. You have a contract on it, right? That is incredibly important. Now you can turn around and you can sell that contract or assign that contract. Let's call it $10,000. You assign it, the $100,000 it's $100,000 worth property. You get a contract for $50,000, and you sell that contract for $10,000 via an assignment. Now that's $10,000. Now what happens is now the buyer is going to fund the entire transaction. He's gonna bring all the money, all the $60,000. $10,000 is going to go to the seller. $50,000 is going to go to the seller, and $10,000 is going to go to you. Now think about this. You could do this once a month. Right? Once a month. What if you did it once a year? What would it take on your current job to get a $10,000 raise for the year? Right? You're probably looking at it and go, who knows what you'd have to do. What if you did it once a month? That's $120,000 a year. We've got guys that listen to this podcast right now that are out there doing deals, and I get stories all the time, and it's amazing. I love hearing these stories of people going out, they're taking the information, they're applying it, and they're getting amazing results. Why? Because they followed the process. They've learned how to talk to sellers, get properties under contract, sell them to cash buyers, and be able to. There's guys up in San Francisco doing $500,000 deals, $500,000 deals, and there's guys making $5,000 checks. All in between. You never know what seller's going to call you, which is so exciting about this business. So. This is the entire podcast. The entire podcast is specifically about that process of marketing for those specific sellers, talking to those sellers, finding the buyer, getting the deal closed, and then scaling it to where you can do like we do, 15, 20 properties a month, right? We do deals all across the entire country. It's amazing. So this is what we're going to teach you in this podcast. It's an absolute blast. Now, if you go to flip2freedom.com, flip2freedom.com, there's 2 places you can go. If you go there, flip2freedom.com, there's a book you'll see right on the front page. There's like a video on there. You got to check it out. But I wrote a book. It's a 129-page book, and it explains the entire concept of what I just talked about from start to finish, right? You can download that for free. Also, if you go to flip2freedom.com/gift, we'll also give away some cool stuff with this series. We're going to give away scripts. We're going to give away repair sheets. We're going to give away the infograph, which is pretty killer. We're going to give away some cool stuff with this, which I think you guys are definitely going to like. Right, so we're going to talk about the 9-step seller conversion sequence. The first step is preparing your file. So picture this, right? You send out some marketing, maybe a postcard, maybe a yellow letter, and you send it out to a pre-foreclosure, you send it out to tax default, you send it out to a vacant property, you send it out to inheritance. Calls come in, you talk to a seller, you build some rapport over the phone with them, and then you book an appointment. Now, if you're in a local market, that's what your goal is, to book an appointment so you can meet with a seller. If you're doing this virtually, then this is all done over the phone. This 9-step sequence is done over the phone, okay? If you're doing this in person, then you're going to do the 9-step seller conversion sequence in person when you meet them. So in this particular case, I'm going to assume that you're in a local market. They pick up the phone, you book an appointment. Now what you're doing is you book the appointment and you've got a set time and set date that you're going to go there. Now, what we want to do is we want to prepare our file, right? So we have essentially a file, right, on each property that we do, right? We have a file on each one, So this particular property on 36th Drive, we have a file on each one, and in this file is incredibly important. Right? We've got to have the lead sheet that is going to tell us, obviously the seller's name, the seller's phone number, the property address is obviously important. This is called the lead sheet, and any other pertinent information that you discussed with the seller that would help you bridge the rapport with them. Okay, so you're going to bridge that rapport. So let's say you're talking on the phone and they are a Cubs fan, right? And they're just like, hey, I'm from Chicago. I'm a big Cubs fan, right? And obviously the Cubs won the World Series. So you turn around and now you have those notes in there that Cubs is something that's important to them. So then when you meet with them, you can talk about the Cubs, which bridges that rapport. All right. So you want to have a lead sheet in there. The other thing inside there, you want to have two purchase contracts, two residential purchase contracts. Now, I suggest using your local board of real estate contract. That is something that most people understand. That's what most attorneys understand. That's what sellers understand. So it protects both sides. Okay. Now, when you in that specific, and we'll get into contract clauses and stuff like that, but you want to have two of those, one for the seller and one for you. Okay. Or, if they have a copy machine, whatever, then, where they can make copies, you can make them copies. Or I even had it to where I fill out one contract, I get their email address, and I'll email them over the contract after we're done. So anyways, I typically put two blank contracts in there or even you can even have them if you really want to be prepared, have them pre-filled out with all the information. But even if you have the blank contracts in there, you're good to go. You can fill it out with them at the property. Okay. So you have the lead sheet, you have the two contracts in there. Now you want to have comps, comparable properties. So what you do is now you're looking for properties that are within, and we're looking for comps. Comps are very difficult for new people when they're getting started. This is one big question and big hurdle that a lot of people hit when they're first getting started is how do I value a property correctly and how do I make the correct offer? Okay, so let's talk about that real quick. So first off, every city is different across the country, and there's different neighborhoods. Like in Phoenix, you can have some neighborhoods that are hot, they're on fire, and you get some neighborhoods you can't sell a thing. So you have to get really neighborhood specific. So what we use is Redfin, or you can even use Zillow, which is great. But what you're going to do is look within a 1 mile radius. Okay, so I fixed and flipped 100 plus different properties, and when I did, I would always meet the appraiser at the property. And when I go meet the appraiser, I wanted to do a couple different things. One, I wanted to show him what we did for the fix and flip on the property, and number two, I wanted to build a rapport. Right, in Phoenix, it's 110 degrees. I'd always bring the guy water in the summer. Right, I'd build a rapport with him. I'd even help him measure the house. Like he'd be at one end of the house, I'd take the tape and measure it down at the end. I'd give him the measurement. And we'd walk the entire house, walk all through the house, and I give him pictures of the before and afters of what we did to that property. So while I was in the process of meeting all these appraisers at the properties on all these properties, I asked him, what specifically is your criteria? So here's the criteria that most appraisers use when it comes to valuing a property. First off, the property has to be of like kind, meaning you have to have a single family house for a single family house. You can't comp a single family house to a mobile home per se. You can't comp a single family house to, let's say, a duplex. The next thing is it has to be a like property, meaning it has to be single story for single story, right? 2-story for 2-story. And the land component has to be similar, meaning if you have one property that's on an acre and you have another property on a 10,000 square foot lot, you have to make an adjustment for that. An appraiser will make an adjustment for that. So what we're doing is looking for similar properties, right? 3-bed, 2-bath to a 3-bed, 2-bath on a 10,000 square foot lot, on a 10,000 square foot lot that's a single story, built within at least a minimum of 5 to 10 years of that age. So you can't comp a house that was built in 2017 to a house that's built in 1984. It's not going to make sense, right? You want to have something within a 5 to 10 year time frame for pulling those comps. So now we understand the property. We're looking for like property, right? Now what we want to do is we want to pull properties within a 1 mile radius, okay? So in this 1 mile radius, right, we're looking for similar properties in this 1 mile radius. It's incredibly critical, right? So we're in a 1 mile. We're not going 10 miles. We're not going 5 miles. We're going 1 mile radius, right? Now, what we do in this particular case, within that 1 mile, we're looking for properties that have sold within the last 90 days, okay? So properties that have closed and sold, not properties that are listed, not properties that are pending, but properties that have sold. Now, within that 1 mile radius, what we're looking for in our particular case, when we're creating our file for the seller, is we're looking for the lowest of the low comps, okay? Because those are comps that are essentially wholesale comps, lowest of the low comps. So within this 1 mile radius, you're gonna find that there are comps that are higher on the high end. Property has been fixed up. You know, they have granite countertops, stainless steel appliances. They're going to be all decked out, pretty, great landscaping. And then you're going to see properties that haven't been touched since the 1970s, right? So the bottom line is there's going to be a big gap, right? Or sometimes, depending, you might be in California and you might be in an area where all the houses are new and the gap is going to be pretty tight, right? That becomes a little bit more difficult. So what you're doing is you're looking for the lowest of low comps in that 1 mile radius that you can use and say, here, this property is similar to your property, Mr. Seller, assuming that it is similar to their particular property, okay? So what you do is now you take the lowest of the low comps. Now, out of those, and you're looking for three of the lowest of the low comps that is sold in the last 90 days in a 1 mile radius that's a similar property. You take those comps and you put them part of your file. Now, what we're doing now is we're going to be negotiating off those comps. Now, here's the thing. Is that, and this is a golden nugget for anybody listening right now, you get the best deals, the biggest spreads, the large checks off deals that are on properties that are older properties. It's very difficult to get huge spreads on properties built in 2005, 2006 that are brand new houses. You can get gigantic spreads on houses that are built in 1980 and below, 1970 and below, 1960 and below, and you might be parts of like St. Louis or parts of like, other Detroit, St. Louis, same thing, Memphis or different areas. So you might be in a different area where, houses are like Kansas, houses are, built in the 1900s and below, right? That's never been remodeled. Those are, pretty rough shape. But with the properties that have a huge amount of deferred maintenance on the property, there's a ton of stuff that needs to be done. The roof, it needs an exterior paint job, it needs landscaping, it needs the interior to be updated to 2017 standard. Those are all things that allow you to get massive amounts of discounts on the property. So the key point, there's two key points of getting huge discounts and huge checks. Number one is distress, right? If you target distress in your mailing and you target vacant properties, you target tax default properties, you target pre-foreclosure properties, you target inherited properties, probate properties, you target all those type of properties there, those are considered distressed properties. And if you target distressed properties, and if those properties have a lot of deferred maintenance on it, where they're older properties that have not been updated, that is the formula for huge checks. Now, what we're talking about is how to negotiate and get those deep discounts on those deals, okay? That was a piece of gold information. If you guys have been maybe listening to the podcast before, I can tell you that is gold. When you're going and pulling your list, make sure that that list, that they've owned the property for a while, and there is that the property is an older property, right? And make sure that you're targeting distress. Those things will make a huge difference in your business. Okay, so now you got your lead sheet, you got your two contracts, one for the seller, one for you. You got your three lowest low comps. Then you're going to need what's called a letter of authorization. A letter of authorization allows the title company to talk to the bank, right? So they can pull a payoff, right? And if they're in pre-foreclosure, it allows you to talk to the trustee that is managing the foreclosure process so you can pull a payoff, and you can pull a reinstatement on that particular property. So a letter of authorization is important because otherwise now you're relying on the seller to get the payoff and relying on the seller to get information from the bank. In this particular case, you get it directly from the bank because you have a letter of authorization. You send over that first, you send over a payoff request, and then you can get the payoff. So now your file's complete. You have your file, right? You got your 3 comps, you got your letter of authorization, you got your contracts, you got your lead sheet, boom, you're ready to go meet with the seller. There's one more thing that is critical that you need in your file. It's an offer price, your highest and best offer. So let me give you the generalized wholesaling offer formula so you have an understanding going in, because you always want to write. And see, inside we have our file right here. Inside of our file, we write inside here at the very, inside of very small, our highest and best offer. Because what happens is when we're meeting with the seller, we get excited, right? We're meeting with the seller and we don't want to let them down, right? We're negotiating with them. And what happens is most people are pleasers. They want to get that person to like them and they don't want to offend them with a low offer, right? So how do you do that? So you put your offer amount and that's your max that you're willing to go. The biggest mistake you can make in wholesaling is signing a contract for too much. If you sign a contract for too much, now you're stuck with it. Now you get a contract. Now you got to try to sell it. That becomes distress on your part because you're going to have a problem trying to sell that property, right? You're going to put it out to the market and no buyer's going to want it. A week's going to pass, 2 weeks going to pass. You're going to have crickets. No one's going to be calling. You're going to be putting banner signs out. You're going to be putting on Craigslist, V-Flyer, blasting the thing out, and no one's going to call. And you're going to be freaking out, right? You're going to go, holy cow, I got it for the wrong price. But on the other side, you sign it for the price that makes sense for you, and it's a win-win for both situations. Then you put it out to the market, and buyers flood your phone. Now you're excited because you've got that deal locked in. Remember, in real estate, you make money when you contract, right? You get when you buy. They call it buy the property. You make money when you buy, right? Not when you sell. So the thing is, if you get a good contract on a deal, it's money in the bank, essentially, because you can sell that property and make a profit. But if you get a contract for a property that's too high, forget about it. It's going to become very difficult. So the offer amount, that number inside there is critically important. I can tell you it is important. So how do we determine that? So what we do is take the 3 lowest little low comps, right? And then what we do is based upon the seller's information that they give us over the phone on, when was the roof replaced last? Well, the roof wasn't replaced since 1982, okay? Well, guess what? We need a roof. When was the interior last renovated? Well, it hasn't been renovated since 1982. When was the kitchen last renovated? It hasn't been touched since nothing's been done since 1982, right? And the house is 2,000 square foot. Nothing's been done. Landscape, it needs a full renovation. So for a real simple, quick and dirty on repairs, and then you can get a little bit more granular when you're on site and on premise, is take the property square footage times. Now, if the property is in fairly good condition, you might use $8 to $10. But let's say a property hasn't been touched since 1982, you might want to use $20. Well, 20 times 2,000, now you're talking about $40,000 in repairs, and that might even be higher when you actually go there and get more specific using the repair sheet, which we'll talk about, which is step 4, evaluating repairs. We'll get into detail on how to kind of do that. We have a killer little sheet that we use to make that happen. But the bottom line is that you got to have it generalized. So let's call it $40,000, right? So now you've got this, and I'm going to just do some math real quick. You got this $200,000 property, right? And you got the lowest of the low comps are $150,000, right? Minus repairs, $40,000, right? So let's call it, retail value is $200,000, right? And what you do is for offer price, you take 70%. It's $140,000, right? So you got $140,000 minus $40,000 in repairs equals $100,000. Now, that is what you can roughly sell it for. Now, I want to make something there's a generalized essential rule. 70% less repairs, less your fee equals your offer price, right? And you're going to sell the property from 70% less repairs, right? That's the generalized rule in this business. Now, if you've been listening to me for a while, you've been watching content for a while and stuff like that, is that the more sophisticated you become, the more advanced you become in the business, that number is going to change based upon the neighborhood and the demand of the area. For an example, we got a property under contract we just analyzed on Monday, right? We got it under contract for 70, and our initial thought was to sell it for 80,000. Now, looking at the neighborhood, there's nothing available under $100,000. And all properties that have sold under $100,000 have sold under 15 days. So what does that tell you? That tells you that anything under 100 is flying off the shelf, and there's nothing available. The next closest property that was available was $125,000. So now the property was in fairly good condition. It wasn't completely trashed, but it was a 1-bedroom, a 2-bath, 1-bedroom, right? So when you looked at it, well, guess what? Instead of selling it for $80,000, we can push that property up to like $89,000 and now pull a potential $20,000 spread out of the deal versus selling for a $10,000 spread. We could even potentially push it higher if we wanted to do that. The only issue is that $125,000 property is a 3-bed, 2-bath, where ours is a 2-bed, 1-bath. Okay, so that's why we decided to price it at like $89,000 for a quick sale. So here's the deal: is that what I'm trying to say is that if you're brand new and getting started, use the formula: 70% of ARV, the top price. So you've got the lowest of low comps and you got the highest comps, right? You take the highest comps that are similar properties, that's your ARV. In this particular case, $200,000. You multiply that times 70%. Boom. Now you have $140,000. Now we just determined repairs, $20 a square foot. $20 a square foot times 2,000 is 40,000 minus $40,000. Boom, we're down to 100,000. Now that's your exit price. That's your exit price. Now let's talk about your fee, right? Now your fee is incredibly important because your fee is how you get paid, your price. And guess who determines that? You do. For an example, my first Extreme Freedom event was, 5 years ago. A guy named Michael Cox was there, and he was flipping houses in Virginia. And he was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I cannot get my fee above $5,000. I don't get it. I've done, some deals, and I cannot get my fee above $5,000. What do I do, right? I'm saying, let me ask you a question. I said, what do you put in when you negotiate, when you find out your number? What do you put in your little file? What's your number? Well, he goes, I usually put in, $7,000 on a deal. Well, here's the thing. I said, Michael, listen, you determine that number. Said, you can make that number 7,000, you can make the number 5,000, or you can make that number 20,000. You determine that deal, you determine what number goes, you determine your fee. And a light bulb went off his head. Boom! He had an epiphany. He was like, oh my gosh, you're right. I'm the one that determines that number. So what he did was he went back, he changed up that one thing, just a simple mind shift. That's it. And I just saw him 2 months ago at one of our boardroom elite mastermind events, and now he's knocking down $17,000, $18,000 per deal and crushing it. Doing over $1 million in business in Virginia right now and killing it. And I look at just a little mind shift. So the bottom line is that you determine your fee. So $100,000, let's call it $15,000. Boom. Now your offer, right? Your offer is going to be $85,000 or less. So your number you're going to write in your folder here is $85,000. Now, obviously, you want to start lower than that and negotiate from there. But guess what? Now, you're probably thinking, who in their right mind is going to sell a $200,000 house for $85,000? Happens all day long and twice on Sunday. That's the business we're in. People want out for, they want to be done with the house, right? And if you have the comps, and now the comps are, let's say the comps are 120, 130 on the low side, and you got 200 on the high side, right? 120, 130, and now you take that and you take $40,000 repairs, and what you do, $50,000, $60,000 in repairs, boom, you easily get down to your offer price. And it's totally logical for you, and it's totally logical for the seller, and it makes complete sense, okay? So when you're determining that, you take the lowest of the low comps when you're negotiating with the seller, minus the repairs, minus your fee, and that's going to be your offer price, right? That's going to be your offer price. Okay. So we've got preparing your file, right? That's everything you want to go preparing your file. That's step number one. Step number two in the 9-step seller conversion sequence. And remember, this is a series. So we're going to do 2 steps in this episode, 2 steps in the next episode, 2 steps in the third episode, and 3 steps in the last episode. And we're getting some really cool, juicy stuff on negotiating and stuff like that. Anyways, so the bottom line is step number 2. It's called pre-appointment intelligence. Okay, what the heck does that mean? Well, you have your file, you know what you're going to offer, you have a good idea, you looked at the comps in the neighborhood, you looked at everything that was going on, you got your number going in, you're good, right? Now you're going to get in the car and you're going to drive to the seller's house. You just don't drive right to the seller's property, pull up in their front yard and go in and knock on the door. You got to do pre-appointment intelligence. You got to know that neighborhood inside and out. And it is critical because the seller will always, almost always, say, oh, the house down the street's selling for X. Why don't you offer me X? And if you don't know, if you go, oh, yeah, really? I didn't know the house down the street. You look like a moron. Like you don't know what you're doing. How do I know that? Because I looked like a moron hundreds of times until I figured out pre-appointment intelligence, all right? So here's the deal, is you show up 15 minutes early on the property, and you're gonna do a couple different things. Number one, you're gonna drive the entire neighborhood, and you're gonna, I have my Zillow app open, right? So I have my Zillow app open, and what I do is I drive around the neighborhood, and I look at all the properties that are for sale. And then I'll take my Zillow app and I kind of look at the pictures and I get an idea of the square footage and I get an idea of the property and also, more importantly, how long the property has been on the market. Okay, that's important, right? Now, I've also looked at the comps of what have been selling in the area, so I kind of have an idea when I was preparing my file. So that's number one, I'm driving around the neighborhood. Number two is I'm looking for sale by owner signs, and I'm looking for rent signs, and I'm looking for vacant properties, okay? I have went to and drove out to a seller's house. I've cased the neighborhood. I pulled a couple vacant properties, a couple sale by owners, and 4 rent properties, and I write those down. I just put them in my app there, and they actually have I can't remember the name of that app. What's that app? I can't remember the name of it. But there's a cool app. You can take a picture of it, and it tells you what the property is and the address, and you can actually save that picture and go back and research it later. Anyways, the bottom line is that, and we'll try to find that, put that in the show notes for you, because I know Brandon, one of our guys, used it. It's pretty killer. But anyways, the bottom line is you're casing the neighborhood. You're looking for properties that you can follow, because now you do the research on the neighborhood. Wouldn't it be great to get into the property in that neighborhood, right? So I have went out and drove to a seller's house, and I didn't get a contract on the seller's house, but I happened to get a contract on the neighbor's house that was selling a house for sale by owner, and it turned out to be a smoking deal. But if I never would have had that exercise and never have done that pre-employment intelligence, I would have never got that contract. I'm driving out there anyways. Might as well write down every possible vacant property, every for sale by owner, for rent sign I possibly can, and see if I can get those deals under contract. Anyways. So now that you're doing that, you're driving the neighborhood, you're understanding the comps, and you're making a mental note, because to overcome, and we're going to get into objections down in the series in the 4th episode there. But when a seller comes up and says, hey, the house 4 doors down is selling for $230,000, and you're offering me $85,000, how does that work? You are going to know that that house is fully renovated, That house is 3,000 square feet. That house has also been on the market for 140 days. So now you present the seller and say, hey, Mr. Seller, you know what? I know the exact house you're talking about. Did you know it was 1,000 square foot more than this house? Did you know that it still hasn't sold yet? It's been on the market for 140 days. And did you know the house is decked? The house probably has $100,000 worth of work. So if we take those same computations, we put $100,000 work on your house, and we price your house on 3,000 square feet on a price per square foot basis, my offer is going to be lower. You don't want me to have a lower offer, do you, Mr. Seller? No. Okay, then, maybe we should take. So what it does is now you know you're a professional. You know what you're talking about. When you go in and talk to a seller, you know exactly what's going on. You know that neighborhood inside and out, and you can walk in there with confidence. So if they say anything about the neighborhood, you are so dialed in, razor sharp, that you understand exactly what's happening in the neighborhood to be able to overcome any objections, okay? So that's why you do pre-employment intelligence. It gives you confidence walking in the door that you know exactly what you're talking about. And that's half the battle. Right? Because when we walk in the door and we shake that seller's hand, we don't want to be scared. We don't want to be afraid. We don't want to be, doubting ourselves and not confident. You're the guy buying the house, right? Think about it. Think about when you go buy a car, right? You go buy a car. What do? You negotiate. You walk in and go, oh, please sell me the car. I just hope you sell me the car. No. You're going there and you're inspecting the car. You're determining if the car is right for you and your family. You're determining if the car rides just right and feels just right, okay? And goes just as fast as you want it and turns on a dime just like you want it, okay? So you're in that car and you're just driving down. You want to make sure that you are confident, right? And you are confident. So what happens is now you've got the seller selling you the car, just like the seller should be selling you the house. So you go back and you're saying, hey, Mr. Seller, so why should I buy this house and not the house down the street? And shut up. So here's the problem. Most people get into this position, right, when they're meeting with a seller, and they are in a position where they're begging the seller to sell them the house, and that is the wrong position. I want you to picture this. I want to picture you have $100 million in the bank, and you're this top-tier elite investor, and you can buy any house you want for any price you want, and you're walking into the house, and you're going to make a decision on why this is the best house for you to buy. That's the attitude you want to come from when you're meeting with a seller. You got $100 million and you're inspecting the property, determining if the house is the right investment for you. Problem is, I know when I first got started, I walk into any house and I was like, okay, it looks great. I'd walk in, I'd walk around the house, I'd look at a couple of things. Okay, great, let's sign the contract. And the seller's like, whoa, I don't, what's happening here? Because I messed up how the relationship should be. The seller is selling me the house, and I'm sitting there going, no, just sign it. And it wasn't congruent. So when you walk in the house, act as if you got $100 million in the bank, and you're picking between this and 5 other houses, and you want to make sure this is the best investment that's going to make you the most amount of money and the most return for you. When you have that attitude walking in, everything will change. Everything will change. All right. So that's step 2, pre-appointment intelligence, talking to a seller. We are going to get into the next steps, meeting the seller, and strategic leading questions, building rapport. Imagine knowing how to read a seller like a book, right? Imagine if you knew if they're analytical. Imagine if you knew they're aggressive. Imagine if they knew they were a personality type where they just want to build friends and talk. Because if you treat an analytical like an aggressive, you're done, right? Or a social conscious person is more worried about, what happens to the neighborhood and how the transaction affects people and is there third-party documentation, right? All those are different personality types, and if you treat each one different, guess what? You're going to lose the deal. Some people, they don't know what they don't know. So we're going to talk about that, step number 3 and step number 4, the repairs. The repairs are huge. Repairs, doing that correctly, will make or break the deal. So that's in the next episode. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast right now. After we're done, subscribe to the podcast. And so you can get updated when the next podcast episode number 136 comes out, because we're going to talk about those two, step number 3 and step number 4 next. Now, remember, go to flip2freedom.com/gift, and you can get the infographic that basically explains the entire 9-step seller conversion sequence. And also, too, in the next episodes, we're going to give away some cool stuff like the objection annihilation method. I'm thinking about giving away the repair sheet. I don't know. Depending on how many cool. I don't know. We'll do something fun. I'll think of a cool little game or something like that. We'll play. But the bottom line is I hope you helped us out. Now, along with this business, right, comes motivation. Now, I always try to find something killer that is exciting and motivating. So what I'm going to do is break right now, and I want you guys to listen to this clip real quick. And it's a cool clip that I love finding motivational clips on YouTube or anywhere and stuff, and listening to it because it just gets you pumped up. So check this out right now.
But you're going to have some ups and you're going to have some downs. Most people give up on themselves easily. You know, the human spirit is powerful. There's nothing as powerful. It's hard to kill the human spirit. Anybody can feel good when they have their health, their bills are paid, they have happy relationships. Anybody can be positive then. Anybody can have a larger vision then. Anybody can have faith under those kinds of circumstances. The real challenge of growth, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, comes when you get knocked down. It takes courage to act. Part of being hungry when you've been defeated, it takes courage to start over again.
Now, I love that. And I love that because it speaks to the human spirit, right? See, because we've all got knocked down before. We've all been in situations where things suck. You wake up and your life sucks, and your family sucks, and your job sucks, and your money sucks, and everything sucks. And in those moments when you can make a decision to be resilient, and here's the bottom line, is that I know I've been in some very, very dark places in my life. Very, very dark places, negative thoughts, negative emotion, didn't like where I was, didn't like who I was, didn't like the situation. And it took a shift in my mindset, a vision of what could happen. So let me create this vision for you. What if you took this information and you listened to all my podcasts and you watch my YouTube videos and you learn from other people about this business? And let's say you can turn around and you can go out and do your first deal and you get your first check. So you prove that can happen for you, right? So you go out and you find a motivated seller, you talk to him, you get everything straight, you get that property under contract, you sell and you make $10,000. Boom, something happens to you, right? What happens is now you have proof of concept. You have confidence. It works. You have to get past that point. You have to get there. Now, once you know it works, guess what? It's all downhill from there because it's now rinse and repeat. The hardest part is in climbing that mountain is getting that first check. Once you do that, everything changes, right? Now, it becomes how can I scale this and do it over and over and over and over and over again? That's what we're talking about. So picture now that you have a team of people, 4 or 5 or 6 good players that are working with you, right? You have marketing that's going out to motivated sellers. Calls are coming in, appointments are being booked, and guess what? You got some sales guys, they're going out that knows this 9-step seller conversion sequence inside and out. They're meeting with sellers, they're getting properties under contract, they're bringing them back to you, and you turn around, you have someone that goes out and sells the properties to the buyers, they get the properties under contract, they manage all the transaction coordination, and you're doing 15, 20, 30 deals a month without your participation. I mean, you're talking millions of dollars, and you're talking about a lifestyle where you can come and go as you please. You can do whatever you want. Now, there's been some very hard times in my life, and I had this vision back in 2008 when I was at one of the rock bottom. I bought millions of dollars worth of land that went to zero. $30 million worth of land that went to zero. Right? I was in a cash flow crunch. I had two choices. I could crawl up in a corner, tuck my tail between my legs, and cry like a baby, or I could have this vision and drive forward to it. Once you create that vision, now it just becomes, how can I put the pieces in place to make this vision a reality? The problem is a lot of people, they get beaten down, they get in these hard situations, they get in these tough times, and they lose their vision. What's your vision? What's your vision for you? What do you want to accomplish? What do you want to become? What do you want to have? What do you want to do? Where do you want to go? Right? What type of legacy do you want to leave for your kids? That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about having a vision. And if you turn around and you make that vision crystal clear, as if you taste it, as if you can live it, as if you can smell it, right? Guess what? That vision will become reality, and it will pull you out of the swamp, because it's going to give you the action and the motivation to go out and make it happen. That's what I'm talking about. That's what you can accomplish. So go to flip2freedom.com, flip2freedom.com. Go download my book for free. It's right on the front page there. Go to flip2freedom.com/gift. Actually, there's a little thing up at the top, gift there. And you can download the infograph for this particular episode, 9-step seller conversion sequence. And, give yourself a shot. I know you might have tried stuff and failed before. I know I have. I tried all these things and it failed before. But what if this was the one thing? What if this was your one thing? What if you really got a hold of this thing and took off with it? All your friends, your family, your relatives, your coworkers, they're going to think you're nuts. You're flipping houses you don't own? What? They're going to think you're crazy. But guess what? You're going to do it in silence. You're going to do it, and you're going to crush it. You're going to get that first check, and that first check is what I call a shut-up check. I remember my father-in-law. He told me, you cannot sell a house you don't own. I did. I made $11,008 my first check. I go, really? It's called a shut-up check. Now, I was nice about it. I smiled about it, right? But I was right? It was good. And I want that for you. So get started, make a commitment, create that vision, drive forward to it. Don't let anything stand in your way, anybody stand in your way, and make it happen no matter what. Because I believe this is the greatest opportunity. This leads in to doing killer stuff. Property syndication, large apartment complex, big deals. Real estate is vast. It's more than $50,000 houses. You're talking $100 million deals. That's what you could be doing. You know what I'm saying? So get started. Get up and go. We have live webinars up on our website at flip2freedom.com. You can join every day it's happening. Make sure you like us on Facebook, flip2freedom.com, Instagram, flip2freedom.com, and I look forward to spending more time with you in the future. So again, thanks for your time, and God bless. All right, so here's what you got to do. Click to the left for another episode. Click to the right. You'll have a killer success story of people that actually have listened and applied the information. And here, click in the middle, and you will be able to subscribe. Make sure you do that for sure so you'll get updates on all of our newest, freshest content.